In the heart of a bustling city, where fortunes are built and lives intertwine, Logan Carter sat in the dimly lit corner of an exclusive restaurant, the flagship of his empire. To the world, Logan was a man who had everything: wealth, success, and influence. Yet, beneath the polished exterior lay a man haunted by a past he could never forget. A love lost 18 years ago had left a scar too deep to heal. On what seemed like an ordinary evening, Logan's routine shattered. As he sipped his wine and watched the rhythmic dance of crystal glasses and polished cutlery reflecting the soft amber light, a new waitress approached his table. Her voice was polite and professional, yet it carried an unsettling familiarity. When Logan glanced up, his heart stopped. It was her, or someone who looked just like her. The same eyes, though shadowed with time, and the same smile, though tinged with a weary edge. Amelia, the woman who had vanished without a trace, stood before him. But how? Why now? And why here, in a restaurant that bore his name? The encounter left Logan spiraling with questions and emotions he had buried long ago. Could this truly be the love he had lost? Or was it a cruel trick of fate? What secrets lay hidden in the years that separated them? This meeting was more than coincidence. It was the beginning of a journey that would unravel truths buried deep in the past and challenge everything Logan thought he knew about love, betrayal, and redemption. If stories of resilience, mystery, and the enduring power of love captivate you, don't miss what happens next. Follow along as the twists and revelations unfold, leading to a conclusion that will stay with you long after the story ends. Logan Carter sat frozen, the polished silverware in his hand trembling slightly. The woman standing before him couldn't be real. It was impossible. Yet, there she was, speaking with a voice that sent shivers down his spine. For a moment, he couldn't respond, his carefully constructed composure cracking. The waitress, Claire Jacobs, as her name tag read, tilted her head slightly, her brow furrowing at his silence. "Sir, are you ready to order?" she prompted, her tone polite but laced with the faintest trace of curiosity. Logan cleared his throat, forcing himself to respond. "The chef's special, please," he murmured, his voice uncharacteristically unsteady. She nodded, offering a practiced smile before turning to leave. Logan watched her retreat, every detail of her mannerisms sparking memories he had buried deep. Her graceful movements, the tilt of her head, even the way she adjusted her notepad. It was all too familiar. Could this truly be Amelia, the woman who had disappeared from his life without a trace 18 years ago? As the evening wore on, Logan found himself unable to focus on anything else. Conversations around him faded into background noise, the taste of his meal barely registering. His mind raced with possibilities. Could it be a mere coincidence? Was she simply a doppelganger? Or was there a more profound reason she had reappeared in his world? When the meal ended, Logan lingered at his table, unable to leave without answers. As Claire passed by again, he stopped her. "Excuse me," he began, his voice steady now but lined with tension. "What's your name?" She paused, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting moment. "Claire. Claire Jacobs," she replied smoothly. The name hit him like a punch to the gut. It felt wrong, like a mask hiding the truth. But her face, her voice, those were undeniably Amelia's. "Thank you," Logan said, releasing her from the conversation, though his mind was anything but at ease. That night, as he stepped into the cool embrace of the city's evening air, Logan resolved to find the truth. He couldn't let this chance slip away. The next morning, Logan sat in his penthouse office, the sprawling city skyline stretching out behind him. His assistant, David, entered, carrying a tablet and a notepad. "You wanted me to look into someone?" David asked, his tone professional. "Yes," Logan replied, his voice firm. "Her name is Claire Jacobs. She's a waitress at Carter's Grill. I want to know everything, her background, where she's from, her history. But do it discreetly. I don't want her to suspect anything." David nodded without hesitation. "Understood, sir. I'll get started right away." As the hours passed, Logan found himself restless. His usual focus on meetings and contracts was nowhere to be found. His mind kept drifting back to Claire. What kind of life had she lived? Why was she here, working in his restaurant? By evening, David returned with initial findings. Claire Jacobs, he began, setting a slim folder on Logan's desk. She's been in New York for about 5 years. Before that, her records are sparse. She seems to have moved around frequently, mostly small towns. And before that? Logan pressed, his voice tinged with urgency. David hesitated. That's where it gets interesting. There's a hospital record from 18 years ago near Boston. She was admitted for head trauma after an accident. Her name wasn't listed. They called her Jane Doe. She was released into the care of a local couple who helped her rebuild her life. Logan's heart pounded as he scanned the document. An accident, head trauma, amnesia, perhaps? It would explain why she didn't recognize him, or even herself. What caused the accident? He asked. There's no police report, David replied, frowning. It's strange. It's as if the incident was never formally recorded. Logan's jaw tightened. Someone had gone to great lengths to erase the details of that night. Keep digging, he instructed. I want to know everything about that accident, and find out more about the family who took her in. That evening, Logan returned to Carter's Grill. This time, he observed Claire with more intention. She moved with calm efficiency, exchanging polite words with customers. But Logan noticed something deeper, the faint tension in her movements, the guardedness in her eyes. When she approached his table, Logan couldn't resist asking, "Have you always lived in New York?" She hesitated, the question catching her off guard. "No," she replied. "I moved here a few years ago." "And before that?" Logan pressed gently. "Boston, mostly," she said, her tone cautious. "I moved around a bit before that." Logan nodded, hiding the storm of emotions brewing inside him. Boston. It aligned perfectly with what David had uncovered. "Do you have family there?" Claire's gaze dropped to the table. "Not really," she admitted softly. "I was taken in by a kind family after some difficult times." Her admission hit Logan like a wave. It was her. He was sure of it now. But how had she ended up here? And why had she lost all memory of their life together? As Claire walked away, Logan knew one thing for certain. The truth was within reach. But uncovering it would require patience, determination, and an unrelenting resolve to protect her from whatever shadows had stolen her past. Logan Carter sat alone in his penthouse, the city lights twinkling like distant stars beyond the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. A glass of scotch rested on the polished mahogany table beside him, untouched. His mind churned with the fragments of information David had uncovered. Boston, the accident, the mysterious disappearance of a police report. It all pointed to something more sinister than coincidence. He opened the slim folder David had prepared and flipped through the details once again. Claire, no, Amelia, had been admitted to a small hospital, her injuries consistent with a fall or being struck. The Jacobs family had taken her in, naming her Claire, giving her a life when she had none. They had done what Logan hadn't been able to, save her. But why had Amelia been running? Who was she running from? Logan's thoughts darkened as he pieced together what little he knew. There was only one person who had been close enough to manipulate their lives, Ethan Blake, his former best friend. Ethan had always envied Logan's success, but Logan had never thought his jealousy could turn so venomous. The timing of Amelia's disappearance, the car accident, and Ethan's insistence that Logan move on. It all fit too perfectly. That night, Logan called David again. "I need you to look into someone else," he said, his voice sharp. "Ethan Blake. Start with his whereabouts around the time of Amelia's disappearance. Cross-check anything related to Boston or that accident." "I want everything." David hesitated. "Do you think he's involved?" Logan's jaw tightened. "I don't think. I know." The next evening, Logan returned to Carter's Grill, the questions swirling in his mind, making it impossible to stay away. Claire was there, moving between tables with her usual grace. Yet, tonight, Logan noticed something different. Her movements seemed more hesitant, her expression distant. When she approached his table to refill his water, he took the opportunity to speak. "Long day?" he asked, his tone casual but concerned. Claire hesitated, then nodded. "Strange," she admitted, her voice quieter than usual. "Strange how?" Logan pressed gently, leaning forward. She paused, her hand resting on the edge of the tray she carried. I keep remembering things. Little flashes. But they don't make sense. What kind of things? Logan asked, his heart pounding. Claire hesitated again, then sighed. A melody I can't place. The sound of laughter. A hand reaching for mine. She gave a nervous laugh, shaking her head. It's probably just my imagination. It's not, Logan said softly, his voice steady. Sometimes the mind holds on to things, even when we don't realize it. She looked at him, her gaze searching his face. For a moment, it seemed as if she might say more, but a customer called for her attention, and she quickly excused herself. As Logan watched her walk away, his resolve hardened. Claire's memories were returning, whether she realized it or not. And when the truth surfaced, Logan would be there to help her piece it all together. The following morning, David arrived at Logan's office with a new folder. His expression was grim. You were right about Ethan, he said, placing the file on the desk. Logan opened it, scanning the contents quickly. What did you find? Ethan was in Boston at the time of the accident, David began. He withdrew a large sum of cash from his account just days before Amelia disappeared. I also found a connection to a private investigator he hired around the same time. There's no direct proof of what he did, but everything points to him orchestrating her disappearance. Logan's hands clenched into fists as he read through the report. Ethan's betrayal was worse than he had imagined. He hadn't just been jealous. He had actively tried to destroy Logan's life, and Amelia had paid the price. There's more, David added hesitantly. The accident wasn't random. A witness saw a car parked near the scene, hidden in the trees. It matches the description of a car Ethan owned at the time. Logan's anger burned like a wildfire. And the police? Why wasn't this reported? The witness tried to report it, but the file went missing, David said grimly. Someone covered it up. Logan leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. He had trusted Ethan with everything. His business, his life, and Amelia. That trust had been shattered in the most devastating way. I need to confront him, Logan said finally, his voice like steel. Are you sure that's wise? David asked, concern etched on his face. Logan nodded. He's the only one who knows the full truth, and I won't let him hide from it anymore. That evening, Logan invited Ethan to his penthouse under the pretense of discussing an old business matter. When Ethan arrived, his usual charming demeanor seemed strained, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. What's this about, Logan? Ethan asked, settling into a chair. Logan wasted no time. It's about Amelia. Ethan froze for a fraction of a second, his composure faltering before he quickly recovered. Amelia? After all these years, I thought you'd moved on. I never moved on, Logan said sharply. And now I know what you did. Ethan's expression darkened. I don't know what you're talking about. Logan leaned forward, his gaze unrelenting. You were in Boston when she disappeared. You hired someone to scare her off, didn't you? But things didn't go as planned. She ran, and that's when the accident happened. Ethan's silence was damning. For a moment, the tension hung heavy in the air. Then, finally, Ethan sighed and looked away. You don't understand, he said, his voice low. You had everything, Logan. The perfect life, the perfect woman. Watching you two together, it was unbearable. I just wanted her to leave, to give me a chance. And you nearly destroyed her life, Logan said, his voice trembling with fury. I didn't mean for it to go so far, Ethan said defensively. It was supposed to be a scare, that's all. But she panicked. The accident. That wasn't part of the plan. Logan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You let me believe she was gone forever. You let me grieve for her, while you pretended to be my friend. You're a coward, Ethan. Ethan flinched at the venom in Logan's voice. I'm sorry, he said quietly. Sorry doesn't fix this, Logan snapped. I'm going to make this right. And you're out of my life. I don't ever want to see you again. Ethan hesitated, as if he might argue. But then he rose and left without another word. As the door closed behind him, Logan felt the weight of Ethan's betrayal settle over him. But beneath the anger and heartbreak, there was a spark of hope. Amelia, Claire, was alive, and he was closer than ever to bringing her back into his life. Logan Carter spent the following morning pacing his penthouse office. The revelations about Ethan's betrayal were like shards of glass embedded in his mind, sharp and unrelenting. Yet, amidst the anger and heartbreak, one thought stood above the rest. Amelia, now Claire, was alive. But how much of her past had truly been lost? How much of it could she reclaim? Logan resolved that he wouldn't push her to remember, but he couldn't stand idly by as fragments of her life lingered in obscurity. That evening, Logan returned to Carter's Grill, his presence as purposeful as ever. Claire was busy tending to a crowded section of the restaurant, her movements fluid but slightly distracted. Logan's keen eye caught the subtle hesitation in her step, the way her hands lingered on a table longer than usual. Something was troubling her. When she approached his table, he spoke softly. "You seem preoccupied tonight. Is everything okay?" Claire hesitated, then shrugged, her gaze drifting downward. "I don't know. Things have just been strange lately." "Strange how?" Logan pressed, his tone gentle but probing. Claire set the water pitcher down and looked at him, her expression both guarded and vulnerable. "I keep having these flashes," she admitted. "Memories, I think, but they don't make sense. It's like they're pieces of a puzzle, but I don't have the full picture." "What kind of memories?" Logan asked, leaning forward slightly. She sighed, folding her hands in front of her. "A fountain, candlelight, laughter, and then darkness, running, headlights." Her voice trembled slightly, and she quickly shook her head. "It probably doesn't mean anything." Logan's heart ached at the pain in her voice, but he kept his tone steady. "Memories don't surface without reason," he said. "Maybe they're trying to tell you something." Claire met his gaze, her brow furrowing. "Why do you care so much?" The question caught Logan off guard, but he quickly recovered. "Because everyone deserves to know who they are. And I think you're starting to remember something important." Claire's lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say more, but a call from another table drew her away. Logan watched her go, his heart heavy. Her memories were returning, but they were fragmented, incomplete, and painful. He knew he had to tread carefully. If he pushed too hard, he might scare her away. But if he didn't, she might never uncover the truth of who she was. Over the next few days, Claire's flashes of memory became more frequent and vivid. She started jotting them down in a small notebook she kept in her apron pocket. Images of a hand reaching for hers, the sound of laughter by a fountain, and the blinding glare of headlights haunted her waking hours. One evening, while wiping down tables at the end of her shift, another memory hit her like a tidal wave. She saw herself running through the rain, her breath ragged, her feet splashing through puddles. The sound of footsteps echoed behind her, and her heart pounded with terror. "Claire, are you okay?" a coworker asked, snapping her back to reality. Claire forced a smile. "Yeah, just tired," she lied. But inside, her heart was racing. Later that night, she sat in her small apartment, staring at her notebook. She scribbled down the memory as best she could. Running, rain, footsteps, headlights, fear. Her hands trembled as she wrote. She couldn't ignore it anymore. These weren't random thoughts. They were pieces of her past clawing their way to the surface. The next day, Logan arrived at Carter's Grill earlier than usual, hoping to speak with Claire before the dinner rush. When he saw her clearing tables, he approached her cautiously. "Claire," he began, his voice low, "I think we need to talk." She looked up at him, her eyes wary but curious. "About what?" "About the memories you've been having," Logan said. "I think they're important, and I think you know they are, too." Claire hesitated, then gestured toward a quieter corner of the restaurant. They sat across from each other, the hum of the restaurant fading into the background. "I've been remembering more," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's like pieces of a life I don't recognize. But at the same time, it feels so familiar." Logan nodded, his gaze steady. "What do you remember?" "A fountain," she said. "We were laughing. You were there, weren't you?" Logan's breath caught. "Yes," he said softly. "That was the night I planned to propose to you." Claire's eyes widened, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Propose? But how? Why don't I remember any of this? Logan hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Because something happened that night. Something terrible. And it changed everything. What happened? Claire demanded, her voice trembling. Logan leaned forward, his tone both gentle and urgent. You were running from someone. I think you were running from Ethan. Claire froze, the name sparking a faint but visceral reaction within her. Ethan? She echoed. Yes, Logan said. He was jealous. Of me, of us. He wanted you to leave me. And when you didn't, he tried to scare you. But things went wrong. Claire's mind reeled as the memories came flooding back. Ethan's voice, the sound of her own breath as she ran, the headlights of a car, and the sensation of falling. She closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face. I remember, she whispered. I remember the fear. I remember running. But why didn't you find me? Logan's voice broke. I searched everywhere for you. I hired investigators. I followed every lead. But you disappeared. The accident, the hospital, they wiped everything clean. I didn't know where to look. Claire opened her eyes, her gaze piercing. And now? What do you want from me? I want to help you, Logan said simply. I want to help you remember, to reclaim your life. But only if that's what you want. For a moment, Claire said nothing, her emotions a whirlwind. Then she nodded, her voice steady but soft. I want to know the truth. All of it. Logan reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. You don't have to face this alone. I'll be with you every step of the way. Claire hesitated, then placed her hand in his. For the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that, perhaps, the answers she sought were within reach. But she also knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. The past was a treacherous landscape, and the shadows of betrayal still loomed large. The next morning, Claire sat at her small kitchen table, the soft light of dawn spilling through her window. The notebook in front of her was filled with fragmented memories and hastily scribbled thoughts. Every piece felt like a weight, but together, they formed a picture she couldn't ignore. Ethan's name lingered in her mind like a dark shadow. The flashes of memory had become sharper. His voice, his anger, the relentless pursuit through the rain. Claire knew she couldn't move forward without confronting the truth. At Carter's Grill that evening, Logan was already waiting at his usual table. When Claire approached, he stood immediately, sensing the urgency in her expression. We need to talk, she said, her voice steady but tense. Logan nodded. Let's go somewhere private. They walked in silence to a nearby park. Beneath the canopy of an old oak tree, Claire stopped, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Tell me everything, she demanded. Logan took a deep breath, his eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. 18 years ago, Ethan was jealous of us, of you, of the life we were building together. He hired someone to scare you, to force you to leave. But things spiraled out of control. You ran, and during the chaos, the accident happened. Claire's breath caught. Why would he do that? Why would he hate you enough to hurt me? It wasn't just hate, Logan said, his voice trembling with emotion. It was envy. He wanted what I had, and when he couldn't have it, he destroyed it. Claire looked away, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her. And you? What did you do when I disappeared? I searched everywhere, Logan said softly. I hired investigators, followed every lead, but it was like you vanished into thin air. I blamed myself for years, thinking I should have protected you. Claire's gaze softened slightly, but her voice remained firm. And now? Why are you telling me this? Because you deserve to know the truth, Logan replied. You deserve to remember who you are and reclaim the life that was stolen from you. Claire took a deep breath, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. I need to face him, she said finally. I need to hear it from him. Logan's eyes darkened with concern. You don't have to do this alone. I'll be there with you. She nodded, her resolve firm. Thank you. The following day, Logan arranged a meeting with Ethan. It was held in the dimly lit back room of a private club, a neutral ground chosen for its discretion. Logan and Claire arrived together, her hand trembling slightly as she clutched the strap of her bag. Ethan was already there, sitting with his usual air of smug confidence. But when he saw Claire, his expression faltered. For a moment, he looked genuinely surprised, and then his mask of calm slipped back into place. "Well," Ethan said, his tone dripping with feigned casualness, "this is unexpected." Claire stepped forward, her voice trembling but firm. "I remember, Ethan. I remember the night you chased me, the fear, the accident. I want to know why." Ethan's gaze flickered between her and Logan, his composure beginning to crack. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Stop lying," Logan snapped, his voice sharp. "We know what you did. It's over, Ethan." Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression hardening. "You think you've got it all figured out, don't you? But you don't know the whole story." "Then tell me," Claire demanded, her voice rising. "Why did you do it? Why did you try to destroy us?" For a moment, Ethan was silent, his jaw tight. Then he let out a bitter laugh. "You want the truth? Fine. I was tired of living in Logan's shadow, watching him have everything while I had nothing. And then you came along. Beautiful, kind, perfect. I couldn't stand it." Claire's stomach churned at his words. "So you decided to ruin my life?" "It wasn't supposed to go that far," Ethan admitted, his voice softening slightly. "I just wanted you out of the picture. I never meant for you to get hurt." Logan's fists clenched at his sides, his anger barely contained. "You let me grieve for her all these years while you pretended to be my friend. You're a coward, Ethan." Ethan's eyes flashed with anger. "And you're no saint, Logan. You pushed me, ignored every warning sign. You made me feel like I was nothing." "This isn't about me," Logan said sharply. "This is about what you did to Claire. Take responsibility for your actions." Ethan looked away, his shoulders slumping slightly. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly, "but I'm sorry, for what it's worth." Claire's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Sorry doesn't change what you did. You stole my life, my memories, and you left me broken." Ethan opened his mouth to respond but stopped when he saw the determination in her eyes. Without another word, he stood and walked out, leaving Logan and Claire alone in the room. As the door clicked shut, Claire let out a shaky breath, the weight of the confrontation crashing down on her. "You were incredible," Logan said softly, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Claire nodded, her voice trembling. "It's not over, but I feel lighter. Like I've taken the first step." Logan smiled, his eyes filled with pride and affection. "We'll take the rest together." As they walked out into the cool evening air, Claire felt a newfound strength rising within her. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, she felt ready to face it. With Logan by her side, she knew she wouldn't have to face it alone. The days following the confrontation with Ethan were a whirlwind of emotions for Claire. The truth was out, but it left her with a sense of emptiness, as though the answers she had sought weren't enough to fill the void created by 18 years of loss and confusion. She spent long hours alone in her apartment, poring over the fragments of her memories, trying to piece together the person she once was. Logan, ever patient, gave her space while remaining a steadfast presence in her life. He sent thoughtful messages and visited Carter's grill to check on her, but he never pushed her to move faster than she was ready. One evening, as Claire sat on her couch with her notebook in hand, Logan arrived unannounced, holding a small box. He knocked gently on her door, and when she opened it, he gave her a soft smile. "I thought you might want to see this," he said, handing her the box. Claire opened it cautiously, revealing a collection of photographs, letters, and mementos from their past. Her fingers trembled as she picked up a photo of them standing by a fountain, their faces alight with joy. "I found these while sorting through some old things," Logan explained. "I thought they might help." Tears welled in Claire's eyes as she flipped through the contents. A movie ticket stub, a pressed flower, and a small, handwritten note she didn't recognize. "What's this?" she asked, holding up the note. Logan hesitated, his expression softening. "It's the letter I wrote to you the night I planned to propose." Claire unfolded the note, her heart pounding as she read the words. It was filled with love, hope, and dreams for a future they never got to share. I don't remember this, she whispered, her voice breaking. Logan stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. That's okay. You don't have to remember everything all at once. Just take your time. The next day, Claire decided to take a bold step toward reclaiming her past. She called the Jacobs family, the kind couple who had taken her in after the accident. When Mrs. Jacobs answered, her voice was warm with recognition. Claire, or should I say Amelia? Mrs. Jacobs said, her tone laced with affection. It's so good to hear from you. Claire smiled, tears streaming down her cheeks. I've been remembering things, bits and pieces. I wanted to thank you for everything you did for me. You don't have to thank us, Mrs. Jacobs replied. You were a blessing in our lives. But if you're ready, there's something we kept that might help you. 2 days later, Claire and Logan visited the Jacobs' modest home. Mrs. Jacobs greeted them with open arms and led them to a small wooden box. Inside was a collection of items Claire hadn't seen in years, a bracelet, a notebook, and a faded photograph of her and Logan. I didn't know what to do with these after you left, Mrs. Jacobs said, but I couldn't bear to throw them away. Claire held the items close, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thank you for everything. With the pieces of her past slowly coming together, Claire felt a growing desire to build something new, something that was entirely her own. She enrolled in a local art and design course, rekindling a passion she hadn't realized she had. Logan supported her every step of the way, attending her first gallery showing and helping her set up a small studio in her apartment. I've never felt this free, Claire admitted one evening as they sat together in her living room. Like I'm finally becoming the person I was meant to be. You've always been that person, Logan said softly. You just needed the chance to see it for yourself. Despite her newfound sense of purpose, Claire couldn't fully let go of the confrontation with Ethan. She knew he had been the source of her pain, but she also realized she had to find a way to release the anger and resentment that still lingered. One evening, she wrote him a letter, not to forgive him, but to let go of the hold his actions had on her. In it, she expressed the pain he caused, but also her determination to move forward. I can't change what you did, she wrote, but I won't let it define me anymore. I choose to live, to love, and to reclaim the life you tried to take from me. Logan read the letter before she sent it, his eyes filled with pride. This is incredible, Claire. It shows how strong you've become. It's not about strength, Claire replied. It's about freedom. As the weeks turned into months, Claire and Logan's bond grew deeper. Their shared history, combined with the trials they had overcome, forged a connection stronger than ever. One evening, as they strolled through Central Park, Logan stopped beneath the towering oak tree where they had first reconnected. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, he said, his voice steady but laced with emotion. Claire turned to him, her heart pounding as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I've loved you for as long as I can remember, Logan said, his eyes glistening, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Claire, or Amelia, will you marry me? Tears streamed down Claire's face as she nodded, her voice trembling. Yes, 1,000 times yes. As Logan slipped the ring onto her finger, the world seemed to fall away, leaving only the two of them beneath the stars. For the first time in nearly 2 decades, Claire felt whole. Their journey wasn't over, but together, they were ready to face whatever came next. With love, resilience, and hope, they had reclaimed not just their past, but their future. The day of their wedding dawned bright and clear, the sun casting a golden glow over Central Park. Logan and Claire had chosen the towering oak tree as the backdrop for their vows, a silent witness to their reunion and the trials they had overcome. The space around the tree was adorned with delicate floral arrangements in soft hues, symbolizing both renewal and enduring love. Claire stood in front of a mirror in a small room adjacent to the park. Her dress, a simple yet elegant design she had crafted herself, was a testament to the new life she had built. Mrs. Jacobs stood beside her, tears glistening in her eyes. You look radiant, Mrs. Jacobs said, her voice trembling with emotion. Your parents would be so proud of you. Claire turned, her own eyes filled with tears. Thank you for everything, for being my family when I had none. Moments later, Logan stood under the oak tree, his heart racing as he watched Claire approach. She was a vision of grace, her steps steady and her smile radiant. As she reached him, Logan took her hands in his voice barely above a whisper. "You're stunning," he said, his eyes never leaving hers. The ceremony was intimate, filled with heartfelt vows that spoke of their journey, of love lost and found, of resilience and of hope. Friends, family, and the Jacobs family were in attendance, their smiles and tears reflecting the depth of the moment. "I vow to honor our past," Logan said, his voice steady but emotional, "and to cherish every moment of our future." "You are my everything, Claire." Claire's voice wavered as she responded. "And I vow to embrace the life we've built and the love that has endured. You gave me the courage to find myself again, and for that, I will forever be grateful." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the small gathering erupted into applause. Logan and Claire shared a kiss beneath the oak tree, the weight of their journey dissolving into the joy of the present. The reception, held in a nearby garden, was a celebration of life and love. Logan toasted to new beginnings, his words met with laughter and cheers. Claire, inspired by the warmth of the moment, stood to speak. "Today isn't just about our love," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "It's about everyone who stood by us, who believed in us, and who reminded us that the past doesn't define the future. Thank you for everything." As the evening drew to a close, Logan and Claire shared a quiet moment beneath the stars. Hand in hand, they gazed at the oak tree, its branches silhouetted against the night sky. "This tree has seen so much of us," Claire said softly. "It feels like home." Logan wrapped his arm around her. "Because it is. And wherever we go, we'll carry that with us." In the weeks following their wedding, Claire and Logan focused on building a life rooted in love, growth, and purpose. Claire expanded her design business, using her creativity to craft pieces that symbolized transformation and resilience. Logan, inspired by her passion, became her biggest supporter, helping her establish a boutique studio in the city. One afternoon, as Claire worked in her studio, a knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find a young woman clutching a portfolio, her eyes wide with nervous excitement. "Mrs. Carter?" the woman asked timidly. "I'm Sophia. I heard you're looking for design apprentices, and I was hoping—" Claire smiled warmly, inviting Sophia in. "Come in. Let's see what you've got." As she reviewed Sophia's work, Claire felt a spark of recognition. The determination in Sophia's eyes reminded her of the younger version of herself, unsure but eager to prove her worth. She decided to mentor Sophia, offering her the guidance she had once sought. Logan, meanwhile, turned his attention to a project close to his heart. Using his resources and connections, he established a foundation dedicated to supporting individuals who had suffered memory loss or trauma, ensuring they had the tools to rebuild their lives. The foundation, named after Claire's birth name, Amelia's Hope, became a beacon of light for those in need. Together, they worked to create a legacy of compassion and perseverance. Their story, once marred by betrayal and loss, now stood as a testament to the power of love and second chances. One evening, as they strolled through Central Park, they paused once more beneath the oak tree. Logan looked at Claire, his gaze filled with pride and adoration. "You've come so far," he said. "We've come so far." Claire smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we still have so much ahead of us." As they walked hand in hand toward the future, the oak tree stood tall behind them, a silent witness to a love that had endured the storms of life and emerged stronger than ever. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if celebrating the journey of two hearts finally at peace.